Every night at 3 a.m., he stood in the forest outside her window. She thought he was a stalker, a threat, a man she should run from. She had no idea he had been waiting 300 years for her. And now that he found her, he would burn the world down before letting anything take her away. This is the story of Emma Mercer and the neighbor who only came out at night. The funeral had been 3 weeks ago, but Emma Mercer still felt like she was drowning. She stood in front of the cabin, her cabin now, with a single suitcase at her feet and the weight of grief pressing against her chest like a stone. The place looked smaller than she remembered from that one childhood visit 15 years ago. The wood was weathered, the porch sagged slightly on one side, and the forest pressed in from all directions like it was trying to swallow the structure whole. But it was hers, the only thing her parents had left behind besides debt, broken promises, and a daughter who didn't know how to exist without them. Emma pulled her coat tighter against the February cold and forced herself to move, 1 foot in front of the other. That's what the grief counselor had said. 1 foot in front of the other, until walking doesn't feel like dying anymore. The key was old and rusty, and it took 3 tries before the lock finally gave way. The door creaked open to reveal a living room frozen in time. Plaid furniture from the 80s, a stone fireplace filled with old ashes, and dust particles dancing in the weak afternoon light. Home, Emma thought bitterly. This is home now. She spent the first few hours cleaning, not because she cared about the dust, but because keeping her hands busy meant keeping her mind quiet. She swept floors that hadn't been touched in years. She opened windows to let out the stale air, even though the cold rushed in like an unwelcome guest. She found her mother's initials carved into the wooden frame of the bedroom door, SM plus JM, inside a crooked heart, and had to sit on the floor for 20 minutes until she could breathe again. By the time night fell, Emma was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical labor. She made herself eat half a granola bar, took a shower in water that never quite got warm enough, and collapsed into the old bed that smelled like cedar and forgotten summers. Sleep came fast, but it didn't last. Emma woke at 2:47 a.m., her heart pounding for no reason she could name. The cabin was silent except for the wind moving through the trees outside, a sound like whispered secrets she couldn't quite understand. She lay there for a long moment, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince herself to go back to sleep, but something felt off, like the air pressure had changed, like she wasn't alone anymore. Slowly, Emma turned her head toward the window and froze. There was someone in the forest. A figure stood among the trees, maybe 50 feet from her cabin, perfectly still. The moonlight was bright enough to show the outline of a man, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothing that made him nearly invisible against the shadows. He wasn't moving, wasn't walking, just standing there, watching. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to duck, to hide, to pretend she hadn't seen, but she couldn't look away. There was something about the way he stood, so utterly still, like a predator waiting for prey to make the first move, that pinned her in place. For a long, terrible moment, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, the figure turned and walked deeper into the forest. Within seconds, the shadows swallowed him whole, and Emma was left staring at empty trees and her own terrified reflection in the glass. She didn't sleep for the rest of the night. By morning, Emma had almost convinced herself it was a dream. Sleep deprivation and grief could do strange things to a person's mind. She'd read about it. Hallucinations, paranoia, the brain creating threats where none existed. That's all it was. A trick of the moonlight and a mind that didn't know how to rest anymore. But when she opened the front door to grab more boxes from her car, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Footprints, large boot prints in the thin layer of snow that had fallen overnight, leading from the tree line directly to her porch. They stopped about 10 feet from her door, as if whoever made them had stood there for a long time, just looking. Then the prince turned and headed back toward the forest. Emma knelt down, her fingers hovering over one of the impressions. The prints were huge, bigger than any shoe size she'd ever seen, and they were fresh, hours old at most. She looked up at the forest, her heart hammering against her ribs. The trees stared back, silent and secretive, giving nothing away. "You're being paranoid," she whispered to herself. "It's probably just a hiker. Or a ranger. People walk through forests all the time. But hikers didn't stand outside strangers' windows at 3 in the morning, and rangers didn't leave footprints that stopped just short of someone's front door." Emma stood up slowly, brushing snow from her knees. She needed answers, and there was only one place to start looking, her closest neighbor. The property was impossible to miss, a massive stone wall that seemed to go on forever, topped with iron spikes that looked more decorative than functional, but still sent a clear message: stay out. Behind the wall, Emma could see glimpses of a house. No, not a house, a mansion. All dark stone and tall windows, and Gothic architecture that looked like it belonged in a European countryside, not the forests of Oregon. The gate was black iron, intricate patterns woven through the metal like frozen vines. There was no doorbell, no intercom, no obvious way to announce her presence, just a heavy brass knocker shaped like a wolf's head, its eyes seeming to follow her as she approached. Emma hesitated, suddenly feeling foolish. What was she going to say? "Hi, I'm your new neighbor, and I was wondering if you were the one creeping outside my window last night." That would go over well, but before she could talk herself out of it, the gate swung open. Not all the way. Just enough to reveal a pathway leading to the front door, an invitation or a trap, Emma couldn't tell. But she'd never been good at walking away from mysteries. The path was lined with trees that had lost their leaves for winter, their bare branches reaching toward the grey sky like skeletal fingers. Everything was meticulously maintained. The snow cleared, the hedges trimmed, the stones perfectly placed. But there was something cold about it, something that felt less like a home and more like a mausoleum. The front door opened before she could knock, and Emma forgot how to breathe. The man standing in the doorway was, without question, the most beautiful person she had ever seen. Tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair that fell across his forehead in careless waves. His face was all sharp angles and shadows, cheekbones that could cut glass, a jaw that looked like it had been carved from marble, but it was his eyes that stopped her cold. They were dark, almost black in the dim light, and they held an intensity that made her feel like he was seeing straight through her skin and into her soul. He was also looking at her like she was a ghost. "Hi," Emma managed, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. "I'm Emma Mercer. I just moved into the cabin down the road, and I wanted to introduce myself." The man said nothing. He just stared at her, his expression unreadable, his body completely still. The silence stretched between them, awkward and heavy. "I also wanted to ask if you'd seen anyone in the forest last night," Emma continued, filling the quiet because she couldn't stand it. "There were footprints outside my window this morning, and I thought maybe you shouldn't have come here." His voice was deep, rough, like he hadn't used it in a long time. And cold. So cold that Emma actually took a step back. "Excuse me?" "This place." He gestured vaguely at the forest, the mountains, the grey sky. "You shouldn't have moved here. It's not safe." Emma blinked, caught between offense and confusion. "Not safe? What do you mean?" The man's jaw tightened. For a moment, something flickered in those dark eyes, something that almost looked like pain, but it was gone before Emma could identify it, replaced by a wall of ice. "Go back to wherever you came from, Miss Mercer. Sell the cabin. Leave before the first snow melts." He started to close the door. "Trust me, there's nothing for you here." "Wait!" Emma stepped forward, wedging her foot in the doorway. You didn't answer my question. The footprints. Was that you? The man looked down at her foot, then back up at her face. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, that she hadn't simply run away. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, but no less final. Stay inside after dark, Miss Mercer. Lock your doors. And whatever you do... He leaned closer and Emma caught his scent, pine and wood smoke, and something wild underneath, something that made her pulse quicken for reasons she didn't understand. Don't come looking for me again. The door closed in her face. Emma stood there for a long moment, her heart racing, her mind spinning with questions. Who was he? Why did he want her gone so badly? And why, despite every warning bell ringing in her head, did she feel drawn to a man whose name she didn't even know? She walked back to her cabin in a daze. It wasn't until she reached her porch that she realized something that made her stop dead in her tracks. He had known her name. She had introduced herself as Emma Mercer, but when he told her to leave, he had called her Miss Mercer. Like he already knew exactly who she was before she ever knocked on his door. That night, Emma sat by her window with every light in the cabin turned on, watching the tree line. She told herself she was being ridiculous, that she should take the stranger's advice and leave. But at exactly 3 a.m., when she saw the dark figure emerge from the forest and take his place among the trees, watching her window with an intensity she could feel through the glass, Emma realized something that terrified her more than his warnings ever could. She wasn't going anywhere, and neither, it seemed, was he. Emma didn't sleep that night, or the night after. Every evening at exactly 3 a.m. he appeared, always in the same spot among the trees, always perfectly still, always watching. And every morning she found fresh footprints in the snow, a silent confession that he had come closer while she wasn't looking. She should have been terrified. Any rational person would have called the police, packed their bags, and driven as far away from Pinewood as possible. But Emma had never been particularly rational, and there was something about the way he watched her that didn't feel threatening. It felt protective, like he was standing guard against something she couldn't see. By the 4th day, curiosity had replaced fear entirely. She needed to know who he was, why he watched her, why his warning to leave had sounded less like a threat and more like a plea. The town of Pinewood was 20 minutes down the mountain, a collection of old buildings, friendly faces, and the kind of small-town charm that belonged in a Hallmark movie. Emma parked her car outside the only diner and stepped into warmth that smelled like coffee and bacon. "Well, aren't you a new face?" The woman behind the counter was in her 60s, with silver hair piled high and a smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. Her name tag read, Betty, and she looked like the kind of person who knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. "I'm Emma," she said, sliding onto a bar stool. "I just moved into the Mercer cabin up on Ridge Road." Betty's eyebrows shot up. "The Mercer place? Lord, that cabin's been empty for years. You family?" "My parents owned it. They passed away recently, so—" Emma trailed off, the words still sharp in her throat. Betty's expression softened immediately. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." She poured a cup of coffee without being asked and set it in front of Emma. "On the house. You look like you need it." Emma wrapped her hands around the warm mug, grateful for the kindness. "Thank you. I actually wanted to ask about my neighbor, the man who lives in the big stone house past the ridge." The diner went quiet. Emma looked around. The few other customers had suddenly become very interested in their plates. Betty's smile had frozen on her face, and something flickered in her eyes that looked almost like fear. "You mean Kane Thorne?" Betty said carefully. "Kane. So that was his name." "Yes, I went to introduce myself, and he was—" Emma searched for the right word. "Unwelcoming." Betty let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "That's one way to put it. Mr. Thorne keeps to himself, Has for as long as anyone can remember. He owns most of the land around here, but nobody ever sees him in town. Groceries get delivered. Bills get paid online. It's like he's a ghost. How long has he lived here? Betty exchanged a glance with an old man sitting in the corner booth. The man shook his head slightly, a warning, but Betty ignored him. That's the strange thing, honey. My grandmother used to tell stories about the Thorne Mansion when she was a little girl. Said there was a man living up there even back then. Betty leaned closer, her voice dropping. That was 90 years ago, and according to her, he looked exactly the same. A chill ran down Emma's spine. That's impossible. That's what I said. But my grandmother wasn't one for tall tales. Betty straightened up, her cheerful mask sliding back into place. Anyway, best advice I can give you, stay away from Kane Thorne. That man has secrets, and in my experience, secrets like his are the kind that get people hurt. Emma finished her coffee in silence, Betty's words echoing in her mind. 90 years. The same face. It didn't make sense. Nothing about Kane Thorne made sense. But instead of scaring her away, the mystery only pulled her deeper. By the time Emma headed back up the mountain, the sun was already setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that would have been beautiful if she wasn't so distracted. She was so lost in thought that she almost didn't see the deer. It leaped onto the road without warning, a flash of brown fur and terrified eyes. Emma slammed on the brakes, but the road was icy, and her old car had never been good in winter conditions. The wheels locked, the car spun, and suddenly she was sliding toward the edge of the road, where the ground dropped away into a ravine that seemed to go down forever. Emma screamed. She closed her eyes, bracing for the impact, for the fall, for the end of everything. But it never came. The car jerked to a stop so violently that her seatbelt cut into her chest. For a moment she just sat there, gasping, her hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Then, slowly, she opened her eyes. The front wheels of her car were hanging over the edge of the cliff. She could see the ravine below, rocks and trees, and a darkness that seemed to go on forever. One more inch, and she would have gone over. But something had stopped her. Emma turned her head toward the driver's side window, and there he was. Kane Thorne stood beside her car, one hand pressed flat against the door, like he had physically held the vehicle in place. His chest was heaving, his dark hair wild, and his eyes were glowing, not a trick of the light, not her imagination. They were actually glowing, a deep, burning gold that seemed to pulse with an inner fire. He looked at her through the glass, and Emma saw something in his expression that stole her breath. Fear, not of her, but for her. "Are you hurt?" His voice was muffled through the window, rough and urgent. Emma shook her head, unable to speak. Kane's jaw tightened. Without a word, he reached down, and Emma heard the groan of metal as he pulled the car back from the edge, like it weighed nothing. The vehicle settled onto solid ground with a thud, and Emma sat frozen, trying to process what she had just witnessed. He had stopped a moving car with his bare hands. He had pulled 2 tons of metal back from a cliff like it was a child's toy, and his eyes had been glowing gold. By the time Emma managed to unbuckle her seatbelt and stumble out of the car, Kane was already walking away. His shoulders were tense, his hands clenched at his sides, and he moved with the kind of speed that didn't seem entirely human. "Wait!" Emma ran after him, her boots slipping on the icy road. "Please, wait!" He didn't stop. "You saved my life," she shouted at his retreating back. "At least let me thank you." Kane froze. For a long moment he just stood there, his back to her, his breath visible in the cold air. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet, she almost didn't hear it. "Don't thank me, Emma." Her name on his lips sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cold. "Why not?" She took a step closer. "You just saved my life. I would have gone over that cliff if you hadn't been there. How did you even know I was in trouble? How did you get here so fast? And your eyes, I saw them, they were... You saw nothing. He turned then, and his eyes were dark again, normal, human. But Emma knew what she had seen. Go home, Emma. Forget this happened, forget me. I can't. The words came out before she could stop them. I've tried, but every night you're outside my window. Every morning I find your footprints in the snow. You tell me to stay away, but you're the one who can't seem to leave. Something cracked in Kane's expression. Just for a second, she saw beneath the cold exterior to something raw and desperate underneath. You don't understand, he said, his voice rough. Being near me is dangerous. I am dangerous. The kindest thing I can do for you is stay away. Then why don't you? The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. Kane stared at her, and Emma watched emotions war across his face. Longing, fear, hunger, pain. His hands flexed at his sides, like he was fighting the urge to reach for her. Because I can't, he finally admitted, the words torn from somewhere deep. God help me. I've tried, but I can't stay away from you, Emma. I don't think I ever could. He turned and walked into the forest before she could respond. Within seconds, the shadows swallowed him whole, leaving Emma alone on the empty road with a racing heart and more questions than ever before. That night, Emma didn't just wait by the window. She opened it. The cold rushed in, sharp and biting, but she didn't care. She sat on the windowsill, wrapped in a blanket, and watched the tree line, waiting. At exactly 3 a.m. the shadow appeared, but this time, instead of staying among the trees, Kane took a step forward, then another, then another. He stopped at the edge of the forest, close enough that she could see his face in the moonlight, close enough to see that he was looking at her like she was the only star in an endless sky. Emma's heart pounded against her ribs. She didn't wave, didn't call out, just held his gaze across the snow-covered distance between them. And then she did something that surprised them both. She smiled. Kane went completely still. Even from this distance, she could see the effect that simple gesture had on him. The way his shoulders dropped, the way his hands unclenched, the way he swayed toward her like a plant toward sunlight. For the first time since she'd arrived in Pinewood, he didn't look like a predator. He looked like a man who had been alone for far too long. When she finally went to bed that night, she found something on her front porch that hadn't been there before. A bundle of firewood, neatly stacked, and resting on top a single white rose with a note in handwriting so old-fashioned it looked like it belonged in another century. The note contained only 3 words: "Lock your doors." But tucked beneath those words, almost hidden, was something else. Something that made Emma's breath catch and her eyes sting with unexpected tears. "I'm sorry." She looked back at the forest, but Kane was already gone, and Emma realized, with a certainty that defied all logic, that whatever walls this man had built around himself were beginning to crack. She just had to figure out how to break through before he disappeared forever. The next few days fell into a strange rhythm. Every morning, Emma woke to find small gifts on her porch: firewood when the temperature dropped, fresh bread wrapped in cloth, a thick wool blanket that smelled like pine, and something else, something warm and masculine that made her heart skip. And every morning, without fail, she found his footprints in the snow. They always followed the same pattern, from the forest to her porch. A long pause where he must have stood, watching her door, then back into the trees, disappearing into the wilderness like he had never been there at all. Emma started leaving things for him too. A thermos of hot coffee on the porch railing, a note that said thank you, another that said you don't have to hide. She never saw him take them, but they were always gone by morning, and sometimes she found a response tucked under her door. "You should stop. This is dangerous. Please, Emma." But he never stopped coming, and she never stopped waiting. On the 5th day, Emma decided to follow the footprints. She woke before dawn, pulled on her warmest clothes, and slipped outside while the sky was still grey with early light. The prints were fresh, the snow disturbed only hours ago, and they led deep into the forest where the trees grew thick and the silence felt ancient. Emma followed them for nearly a mile, her breath forming clouds in the frozen air. The forest was beautiful in a haunting way, all white snow and dark bark and branches that reached toward the sky like prayers. The footprints led to a clearing, and in the center of that clearing she found something that made her stop dead in her tracks. A circle of stones, old and weathered, arranged in a pattern that looked almost ceremonial. In the center, the snow had been disturbed, pressed down in the shape of a large body, like something had lain there for hours. And around the edges, she could see marks that didn't look human. Claw marks, deep gouges in the frozen earth, as if something with massive paws had paced around the circle again and again. Emma knelt down, her gloved fingers tracing the edge of one of the marks. They were huge, bigger than any wolf or bear she had ever seen, and they were fresh. "What are you, Cane Thorn?" A branch snapped behind her. Emma spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. But the forest was empty, the trees silent, the shadows still. "You shouldn't be here." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the trees. Emma recognized it immediately. "Then come out and tell me that to my face," she called back. Slowly, Cane emerged from behind an ancient oak, his dark coat blending with the shadows. He looked different today, wilder somehow. His hair was disheveled, his jaw dark with stubble, and his eyes were flickering, brown to gold and back again, like two parts of him were fighting for control. "You followed my tracks," he said. "You left them outside my window, every single night. If you don't want me to find you, maybe stop leaving a trail directly to my door." Something that might have been a smile ghosted across Cane's face. "You're not afraid of me." An observation made with something like wonder. "Should I be?" "Yes," he said quietly. "You should be terrified of me, Emma. You should run as far and as fast as you can and never look back." "Why?" "Because I'm not what you think I am." His voice cracked. "I'm not some mysterious neighbor with a dark past. I'm not a man who needs to be saved. I am something old and dangerous and broken, and every second you spend near me puts you at risk." "What happened to you?" she asked softly. Cane flinched like she had struck him. "I'm afraid of myself." The words exploded out of him. "I'm afraid of what I might do to you, what I want to do, what every part of me is screaming to do every time you come near me." Emma should have been scared. She should have run. But all she felt was an overwhelming urge to close the distance between them. "What do you want to do?" she whispered. Cane looked at her, and she saw 300 years of loneliness in his golden eyes. "I want to keep you," he said, the confession torn from somewhere deep. "I want to hold you so close that nothing can ever take you away. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're safe, knowing you're mine, knowing that the universe finally gave me something worth living for." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Then why push me away?" "Because the last person I let myself care about ended up dead," he said quietly. "And I can't survive that again. Not with you. Not when you're—" He stopped himself, shook his head, took a step back. "Go home, Emma, please, before it's too late for both of us." He turned and walked into the forest, disappearing between the trees like a ghost. That night, Emma sat on her porch with a lantern burning beside her, watching the tree line. He appeared just after midnight, earlier than usual. He stayed deep in the shadows, almost invisible, but Emma could feel him watching her. She held up a piece of paper, knowing he could see it even in the darkness. On it, she had written 4 words. "I'm not going anywhere." Udis, the shadow in the forest went completely still. When she woke the next morning, she found a new note on her porch. Then God help us both. The storm came without warning. One moment the sky was grey but calm, the next the wind was howling through the trees like a living thing, bringing walls of snow so thick Emma couldn't see her own hand in front of her face. She had been in town when it started. Now she was stuck on the mountain road, her car trapped in a snowdrift, miles from town and even further from help. No signal. Temperature dropping. Emma pulled on every layer she had, her coat, a spare sweater, the wool blanket Kane had left on her porch. But as the minutes ticked by and the cold crept deeper into her bones, fear began to win. This is how people die, she thought. Slowly, quietly, freezing to death in their cars. Her eyes drifted closed. Just for a moment, she told herself. Just to rest. The cold didn't feel so bad anymore. A sound cut through the howling wind. Emma's eyes snapped open, a low, sustained howl that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Something alive, something powerful, something close. The car shook. Emma scrambled upright as something massive slammed against the driver's side door. Through the frost-covered window, she caught a glimpse of something that made her blood run cold. Golden eyes. Not human eyes. These were huge, blazing, set in a face covered with dark fur. A wolf's eyes, but no wolf she had ever seen was this big, this intelligent, this terrifyingly beautiful. The creature stared at her through the glass for one endless moment. Then it shifted. Emma watched, frozen in shock, as the massive wolf seemed to blur and change, bones cracking and reforming, fur receding into skin, until a man stood in its place. Kane. He was barefoot in the snow, wearing nothing but a thin shirt and dark pants. His chest was heaving, his dark hair wild, and his eyes, still tinged with gold, held a desperation that cut through Emma like a knife. He yanked open the car door with inhuman strength. Emma! His hands cupped her face, and she realized with distant surprise that they were warm, impossibly warm. Emma, can you hear me? Look at me. Stay awake. Kane? Her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely form words. What are you? Questions later. Right now I need to get you warm. He unbuckled her seatbelt and lifted her out of the car like she weighed nothing. Hold on to me. Don't let go. Emma curled into his impossible warmth, her frozen fingers clutching his shirt, her face pressed against a chest that radiated heat like a furnace. I saw what you are, she managed through numb lips. Kane's arms tightened around her. I know. You're a wolf. Yes. That's impossible. He started walking through the blizzard, moving with a confidence that suggested he could see perfectly despite the whiteout conditions. You almost died tonight, Emma. Can we save the existential crisis for after I make sure that doesn't happen? A hysterical laugh bubbled up from Emma's chest. Fair point. Then they were inside. Warmth hit her like a wave. Emma blinked, trying to focus, and found herself in a room she didn't recognize. High ceilings, stone walls, a massive fireplace already blazing with flames. Kane's house. She was in Kane's house. He set her down on a leather couch close to the fire, pressing a steaming mug into her trembling hands. Drink, he ordered. Slowly. You found me, she said when she could finally form complete sentences. In that blizzard. You found me. Kane was crouched by the fire. He didn't turn around. I always know where you are. How? A long pause. It's complicated. What you saw tonight, he said carefully. You weren't supposed to see that. No one was ever supposed to see that. But I did. Emma set down the mug. I saw you. A wolf. A man. Both. Kane closed his eyes. I should make you forget. I could, you know. There are ways, old ways. You would wake up tomorrow thinking this was all a dream." Emma's heart clenched. "Is that what you want?" "No." The word came out broken, desperate. "God, no, I want—" He stopped, shook his head. "It doesn't matter what I want. The safest thing for you would be to forget me entirely." "I don't want to forget." Emma stood, her legs unsteady but holding. She walked toward him, closing the distance he kept trying to create. "I don't want to forget the man who watches over me every night, who leaves firewood on my porch, who saved my life twice in 1 week." "Emma, stop." "I don't want to forget the way you look at me." She was close enough now to touch him, like I'm something precious, like I'm something you've been waiting for. Kane's control shattered. 300 years. The words burst out of him like a dam breaking. 300 years I have walked this earth alone. I have watched everyone I ever loved grow old and die. I have buried my entire pack, my family, my world. And I told myself I would never let anyone in again, never care, never hope, never want. His hands came up to cup her face, gentle despite their strength. And then you appeared. You walked into my forest with your grief and your courage and your stubborn refusal to be afraid of me. And everything I had sworn, every wall I had built, every vow I had made to stay alone forever, it all crumbled because of you. "What am I to you?" she whispered. Kane looked at her with 300 years of loneliness in his eyes. "You're my mate," he said quietly. "The other half of my soul, the one I've been waiting for since before your great-grandmother was born." He pulled back, putting distance between them. "And that's exactly why you need to stay away from me. Because the last time I had a mate, I couldn't protect her. And if anything happens to you, if I lose you, Emma, there won't be enough left of me to bury." He walked out of the room before she could respond. And Emma stood alone by the fire, her heart full of impossible truths and a love she didn't know how to name. Emma didn't sleep that night. She went exploring. The hallway outside the living room was lined with photographs in ornate frames. Some were painted portraits in oils, their colors faded with age. Others were black and white photographs, and some were modern prints. But in every single one, regardless of the era, the same face appeared. Kane, standing beside a Victorian woman, posed in front of a Model T Ford, wearing military uniform from what looked like both world wars, in jeans and a leather jacket in front of a 1950s diner. 300 years. He hadn't been exaggerating. "You shouldn't be wandering around." Emma turned to find Kane standing at the end of the hallway. "These are all you, every single one." "Yes." Emma moved to a portrait near the beginning of the collection. It showed Kane in clothing from the early 1700s. "Who painted this?" "A woman named Eliza. She was my wife." "Your wife?" "My mate, my first mate. We were married in 1723. She died 2 years later." "What happened?" "There were others like me, other wolves. A pack of rogues who believed that humans were beneath us, prey, not partners. When they discovered I had taken a human mate, they saw it as a weakness." Emma's throat tightened. "They killed her. They made me watch." The words were hollow, empty. "And when it was over, I destroyed them, every single one. I became something so dark, so savage, that even other wolves feared me. And then I ran. I hid. I swore I would never let myself love anyone again." For 300 years. For 300 years. "Why me?" she asked softly. "After all this time, why now?" "I don't know. All I know is that the moment I saw you step out of your car, something inside me woke up, something I thought was dead forever." "Your wolf?" "My heart." Emma closed the distance between them. Her hand came up to cover his, pressing his palm against her cheek. "I'm scared," she admitted. "This is all impossible and terrifying and completely insane." "You should be scared. This world, my world, it's dangerous, dark. There are things out there that would destroy you just to hurt me. I know. But I'm more scared of walking away. I've been numb since my parents died, Kane. Going through the motions. Existing but not living. You woke something up in me too, and I'm not ready to let that go. Kane made a sound that was half groan, half surrender. His control visibly cracked, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was everything and nothing like Emma had imagined. It was desperate and tender, hungry and reverent, his hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, closer, like he was trying to memorize the shape of her. And she kissed him back with everything she had, telling him without words that she was here. She was real. She wasn't going anywhere. 300 years of loneliness poured out of him and into that kiss, and Emma absorbed it all, replacing the darkness with light, the pain with hope, the isolation with connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kane pressed his forehead against hers. His hands were trembling where they cupped her face, and she could feel his heart racing against her chest. "This is a mistake," he whispered. "I should be stronger than this." "Maybe," Emma smiled against his lips, "but I've always liked mistakes." He laughed, a real laugh, rusty from centuries of disuse, but beautiful. "You're going to be the death of me, Emma Mercer." "Maybe, but at least you won't die alone." His arms tightened around her, and for the first time in 300 years, Kane Thorne held something he was terrified to lose. Outside, the storm had finally passed, and neither of them knew that in the shadows beyond the property line, golden eyes watched the windows with a hatred that had been festering for centuries. The Alpha, who had destroyed Kane's first family, had finally found him again. And this time, he had come for his mate. The next morning, Emma found herself drawn to a locked door at the end of a long hallway. The door was slightly ajar. Inside was a shrine. The walls were covered with paintings, all of the same woman, beautiful, with dark hair piled high and soft eyes. Eliza. And in the center of the room, on a pedestal draped in black velvet, sat a small portrait in a golden frame. The woman in the portrait was looking directly at Emma, and for one terrifying moment, Emma felt like she was looking at herself. "You found her!" Emma spun around. Kane stood in the doorway. "She looks like me." Kane nodded slowly. "The resemblance is striking. When I first saw you, I thought—" He stopped. "It doesn't matter what I thought. Tell me." For a moment I thought she had come back to me, that somehow, after all these years, fate had returned her to my arms. His voice cracked. "But you're not Eliza. I know that now. You have her face, but your soul is your own. Your strength, your stubbornness, your light, those are all you." "Is that why you watched me? Why you couldn't stay away? Because I look like her?" "At first, maybe. I don't know." Kane reached out, taking her hands in his. "But that's not why I fell in love with you, Emma. Everything after that, every moment I spent watching you, protecting you, wanting you, that was about you. Only you." "You love me?" Kane lifted her hands to his lips, pressing a kiss against her knuckles. "I love you," he said simply, "more than I have ever loved anything in 300 years. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. "I love you too. I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. But I feel like I've been waiting my whole life for you." Kane pulled her close, wrapping her in his arms. "There's something else you need to know," Kane said finally. "The wolves who killed Eliza, their leader, his name was Marcus Vale. He was my brother." Emma's blood went cold. "Your brother killed your mate." "Half-brother. Same father, different mothers. We were raised as rivals, and he never forgave me for being chosen as Alpha." Kane's jaw tightened. "I thought I killed him that night. along with the rest of his pack. I thought I had ended it. But Cain walked to the window, staring out at the snow-covered forest. 3 days ago I caught a scent on the wind, one I haven't smelled in 300 years. He turned to face her, and his eyes were golden, his wolf rising to the surface. Marcus is alive, and he's here. Emma's heart stopped. Here? In Pinewood? Close. Getting closer every day. He's coming for me, she whispered, like he came for her. Cain crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms with desperate strength. I won't let him touch you, he growled. I will burn this world to ashes before I let anyone hurt you. Do you understand me, Emma? You are mine, and I protect what is mine. Whatever darkness was coming, they would face it together. The days that followed were the happiest of Emma's life. She moved into Cain's mansion. Cain was different when they were alone together. Tender, attentive, almost reverent. He brought her breakfast in bed. He read to her by the fire. He taught her the names of every tree in his forest, every bird that made its home in his woods. And at night, he held her like she was the most precious thing in the universe. But he was also preparing for war. Every day, he spent hours running the perimeter of his property in wolf form, searching for signs of Marcus. He taught Emma how to handle weapons, silver knives, wolf's bane, the ancient herbs that could slow a wolf's healing. Days passed without any sign of Marcus. Emma began to wonder if maybe they had been wrong. She should have known better. It happened on a Tuesday. Emma was alone in the mansion. Cain had gone to town for supplies. She was in the library when she heard it. A howl. Not Cain's howl. This was different, higher, sharper, full of malice. Another howl, closer, then another, then another. Not one wolf, many. Wolves emerged from the tree line, 15 of them, their eyes glowing various shades of gold and amber. They moved in formation, disciplined, organized, an army. At their head was the largest wolf Emma had ever seen. He was massive, bigger even than Cain's wolf form, with fur so black it seemed to absorb the light. His eyes were red, not gold, burning with hatred. As she watched, the wolf transformed. A man stood where the beast had been, handsome in a cruel way, with sharp features and dark hair, and a smile that made Emma's blood run cold. He looked like Cain, but where Cain's face held sadness, this man's held only malice. Marcus. "Little mate," he called out, his voice carrying across the snow. "Won't you come out and play? My brother isn't here to protect you." Then she heard another howl. This one she recognized. Cain burst from the trees in wolf form, a streak of dark fur and golden eyes, and rage so pure it seemed to set the air on fire. He slammed into Marcus with the force of a freight train. Emma watched in horror as Cain and Marcus fought. It was brutal, savage. Blood sprayed across the white snow. Then Marcus did something that made Emma scream. He plunged a poisoned blade, wolf's bane, into Cain's side. Cain's howl of agony shattered the night. He collapsed. Marcus stood over him, that terrible smile on his face. 300 years, Marcus said. 300 years I've waited for this moment. And now, finally, I get to take everything from you, just like you took everything from me. He turned toward Emma, starting with her. Emma didn't think, didn't plan. She ran out the door and into the snow, the silver knife raised, placing herself between Marcus and the man she loved. "Don't touch him," she snarled. "Don't you dare touch him." Marcus looked at her with surprise and hunger. "Oh, little mate, you're even more beautiful than she was." Behind her, Cain groaned. "Emma, run!" But Emma didn't run. "If you want him," she said, "you'll have to go through me." Marcus smiled. "That can be arranged." He lunged. Emma slashed with the knife, catching Marcus across the arm. Silver hissed against his skin. He snarled in pain and backhanded her across the face. She hit the snow hard. Through blurred vision, she saw Marcus standing over her. Enough games, time to end this. He raised his hand, claws extending, and then the world exploded. Cain hit Marcus like a force of nature. Somehow, impossibly, he had risen despite the poison. His wolf form was unstable, flickering, but his power was undeniable. Emma scrambled to her feet, searching for her knife. Cain was losing. The poison had weakened him too much. "Give up, brother," Marcus taunted. "You were always going to die alone." Cain fell to his knees. His eyes found Emma's, and she saw something there that shattered her heart. Goodbye. No. Emma ran toward them, knife raised, screaming. She drove the silver blade deep into Marcus's shoulder, not a killing blow, but enough to make him howl. He grabbed her throat, lifting her off the ground. Stupid girl. And something inside Emma snapped. She felt it like a physical sensation, a wall crumbling, a power she had never known flooding through her veins. Her skin began to glow, her eyes burned with light. Let him go. The words hit Marcus like a physical force. He stumbled back, releasing her throat. What are you?" "I am his," she said, and her voice was not entirely her own. "And he is mine, and you will not take him from me." The power exploded outward. Marcus screamed as the light hit him. And Cain began to heal. Emma watched in wonder as his wounds closed, the poison burning away. "Impossible," Marcus gasped. "No human could—" "She's my mate," Cain said, rising with the strength of an alpha restored. "The one the prophecy spoke of, the moon's daughter, the one who would heal the broken alpha." Emma's glow began to fade. She stumbled, exhausted, and Cain caught her. "Don't kill him," she whispered. "What?" "Please, don't become a murderer for me. Don't let his darkness poison your soul." Cain stared at her, centuries of hatred warring with love. But Emma was asking him for mercy, and he could deny her nothing. "Leave," Cain said to his brother. "Take your pack and go. If you ever come near her again, I will hunt you down and end you." Marcus rose, swaying slightly, and looked at Emma. "You chose well, brother," he said quietly. "Better than I ever could." He transformed and ran, disappearing into the forest. One by one, his wolves followed. Emma's legs gave out. Cain caught her, lifting her in his arms. "What happened to me?" she whispered. "I don't know, but whatever it was, you saved us both. I love you. I love you too. I've loved you for 300 years, Emma. I just didn't know it until now." Emma closed her eyes, and for the first time since her parents died, she felt truly home. Emma slept for 3 days. When she finally opened her eyes, the world felt different, sharper, brighter. "You're awake." Cain was sitting by the bed. "What happened to me? That power?" "There's a prophecy, an old one. It speaks of a human born with the spirit of the moon. Someone who could heal broken wolves, bring peace where there was only war. I never believed it. But what you did, Emma, what you are extraordinary. And now that your power has awakened, you have a choice to make." "What kind of choice?" "I can help you suppress it. The power. You could go back to being human. Leave this place, live a normal life, forget about wolves and mates and prophecies. And what about you? I would let you go, if that's what you wanted." Emma walked to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "What's my other choice?" He turned, looking down at her. "You could embrace it, stay with me, be my mate in truth." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I could turn you, make you like me, then we would have forever. Forever. Would it hurt?" "Yes. The transformation is difficult. Not everyone survives, but not everyone. Not everyone. The strongest ones, the ones with someone to anchor them, they come through whole, and you would have me, every moment." Emma thought about her life before Pinewood, the emptiness, the feeling of drifting without purpose. She had found home. "I want it," she said. "All of it. The power, the bond, The transformation. I want forever with you. The ritual needs to happen under the full moon. That's in 3 days. In 3 days, she would become a wolf, and her forever would finally begin. She woke to screaming, not her own, a sound from outside. The forest was burning, flames licked at the trees, unnatural fire that glowed green and purple. And silhouetted against the blaze, wolves, dozens of them. Cain burst through the bedroom door, already half transformed. He came back, Emma breathed. He never really left. There's a safe room in the basement. No, turn me, Cain, right now. Give me the power to fight beside you. Cain made his decision. Lie down, don't move no matter what happens, and whatever you feel, don't fight it. Let the wolf in. Emma lay back, her heart pounding. Cain leaned over her, fangs extended. His eyes were pure gold now. I love you, he said. I love you too, now do it. His fangs sank into her throat. Pain. That was all Emma knew. Pain like fire in her veins, like lightning in her bones, like every cell in her body was being torn apart and rebuilt. She heard herself screaming, but couldn't stop, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but burn. She felt her bones cracking and reforming, her muscles stretching and strengthening, her senses expanding beyond anything she had ever imagined. The wolf was being born inside her, a wild and ancient spirit merging with her human soul. And then, peace. The pain receded like a tide, replaced by something else entirely. She felt strong, powerful, alive in a way she had never been before. Her senses exploded. She could hear the wolves outside, smell the smoke from the fires, feel the moonlight on her skin, like a physical caress. Emma, can you hear me? She opened her eyes. The world was different now, sharper, more vivid. I hear you, she said. I hear everything. The transformation. It worked. You're whole. Emma sat up. She could feel the power beneath her skin. The wolf was there now. Let's end this. Together they walked out to meet the fire. Marcus had brought an army, 40 wolves at least. You came out to play, he called. Emma felt her wolf surge forward. The transformation was there, waiting. She let it take her. This time the shift didn't hurt. It felt natural. Her bones reformed. Her skin became fur. When it was over, she stood beside Cain in wolf form, white fur gleaming silver in the moonlight. Impossible, Marcus breathed. A white wolf, the prophecy is real, Cain finished. You should have stayed away, brother. The battle began. Emma's wolf moved on pure instinct. She fought beside Cain, their movements synchronized like they had been doing this for centuries instead of minutes. It was as if their wolves knew each other, recognized each other, moved together as naturally as breathing. She ducked under a slashing claw, twisted away from snapping jaws, felt the exhilaration of power coursing through her newly transformed body. This was what she was meant to be. This was who she had always been, waiting to be awakened. But Marcus was strong, stronger than any wolf should be. He lunged at Emma, his jaws closed around her hind leg. She felt bone crack. She twisted in his grip, her own jaws finding his eye. He screamed and released her. Enough! Marcus transformed back to human form, clutching his ruined eye. You want to end this? Fine. You and me, brother. One fight, to the death. And if I win, my wolves leave. You have my blood oath. Cain looked at Emma. End him, she said quietly. But remember what I said before. Don't become a monster for me. I won't. Thank you for reminding me who I want to be. Then he turned and walked toward his brother for the final time. The two alphas circled each other slowly. You should have stayed dead, Marcus said. You should have let me grieve in peace. Marcus attacked. The fight was brutal, but this time Cain wasn't poisoned. This time he had something to fight for. Slowly, inevitably, Cain began to win. Finally, Marcus fell. Cain stood over him, claws extended, ready to deliver the final blow. Do it, Marcus gasped. We both know you want to." Cain's hand trembled. "I did want to. For 300 years I dreamed of this moment." "Then take your justice." Cain lowered his hand. "No, I'm not killing you, Marcus. Not because you deserve mercy, but because I deserve peace. You've taken enough from me. I won't let you take my soul, too." "You're a fool." "Maybe. But I'm a fool who gets to spend eternity with the woman I love. What do you have?" The pack wolves began to lower their heads in submission. Not to Marcus, to Cain. Emma watched as the wolves who had served Marcus, 40 battle-hardened warriors who had followed a monster into war, dropped to their knees before the alpha who had shown mercy. It was a sight she would never forget. The blood oath Marcus had sworn bound them now to Cain, and she could feel their allegiance shifting like the tide. "It's over," Emma said softly, taking Cain's hand. "You won. We won. Together." Spring came to Pinewood like a promise kept. The snow melted slowly, revealing earth that had slept for months, stirring with new life beneath Emma's feet. The forest was different now. She could feel it through her wolf senses, every growing thing calling out to the moon that hung overhead, even in daylight. 3 months had passed since the battle. Marcus was gone, not dead, but exiled, stripped of his power, wandering the earth alone. The wolves who had served him had integrated into Cain's territory, and Emma had come to accept her new reality. Being a werewolf was nothing like she had imagined. The movies got it all wrong. The transformations weren't agonizing monthly curses, but joyful releases, opportunities to run free under the moon with the man she loved. Her wolf wasn't a separate entity fighting for control, but an integral part of who she was, a voice in the back of her mind that understood the world in ways her human brain never could. She had found a family in the pack, wolves who had once served Marcus, but now looked to her and Cain for guidance. She had found purpose in helping them heal from years of following a monster. And she had found joy in the simple things. Running through the forest at dawn, hunting under the stars, curling up by the fire with Cain's arms around her. And Cain was everything.